Hi, Doug.
Megan,
How are you today? It's so good to see you as always.
I know every day seems like just getting better than the next one. So no, I think that we're in a direction, not just you and I, but our country, hopefully towards resurrecting a way out of this virus and just back to normalcy.
I know. Well, you had an exciting week because you passed your health license today or last week.
Right, health and life. It was it's like it's hard doubling up something. It's not that those two aren't connected, but there's life and then there's death. So there's health insurance and then there's life insurance. And I learned something a long time ago. You can graduate, but you never stop learning. I graduated from high school and graduated from college, and I mentioned to you, Megan, about a number of licenses. I guess you could say you had a little graduation ceremony. If you go through something, like all these professions, other than maybe medicine, because you have to go to obviously medical school, and that's a much more prolonged experience. But most of the other occupations, I just learned this morning, not that I wanted to become, a plumber, but, there's an opportunity. The guy came on as a commercial and he was actually pleading with the general public. Hey, for all of you out there that don't know what you want to do, there's an opportunity. I think he said it was 14 weeks, which would be like 3 months.
And so yeah. Now you're telling me you're going to become a plumber.
I'm just saying, and you can.
You're so funny. You are a guy that grabs everything the world has to offer.
Honestly, I mean, if we go through each day, and sometimes we're on automatic pilot. We're not listening to anything. We're not looking at anything. How many times have you driven in your car someplace and you go, I don't even remember how I got here. You just are there. You don't remember going through red lights, stop signs, looking for people, crossing. No, you were in a zone. And too many of us are in a zone. And like I said before, you can graduate, but you never stop learning. And, that's been my life. And I would much rather, this is only me personally, having gone through 4 years of college, and not to criticize that or anything, but if you're really one of those guys that wants to accomplish something quick, a 4-year program is not a quick program. I mean, it's a long time. It's drawn out, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And, it's just one of those things that it goes a long time. Now, you are in college, which is like really the best time of your life, more for parties and, your relationships with people, things that you've never done in your life as a high school person. Now, all of a sudden, you're college, you're independent, you come and go when you want, you have to make decisions. But I think in continually adding to who we are, I think you improve yourself. You improve yourself because I've met a lot of people in my life in having given presentations at companies and schools and universities and things like that, talked in front of athletic teams. And I feel like that several times in my life, even in sports, when I was with the Bears in Ohio State, I really admire our head coach in college, Woody Hayes, because about once every month, regardless of whether it was the season or it was the off season, he brought in a person that was totally unrelated to sports. Sometimes they were military, sometimes they were in business, and they gave you a synopsis in about 30, 45 minutes of their life, their experiences, what they learned, how they became a better person, how they sacrificed, how they managed to get educated through a system, whatever it might have been that they were involved in. And some of those, I'm serious, Megan, you're in college and you're thinking you're a tough guy, nobody can hit me. Or I actually had tears rolling down my face several times at the end of their presentation. It was so heartwarming. And it was just one of those things that, I felt like, I just felt like, you know what? I want to be like that person. I want to be always learning. I want to change who I am. I want to be able to have a conversation with someone, and whatever topic comes up, maybe other than space travel, I could chip in and say, hey, I've been there. I know what you're talking about. Or I have friends. You and I talk about this all the time. You can't go through life like the Lone Ranger. You're never going to get anywhere. Your net knowledge base, even though you think you're the most intelligent person in the world, it's small in comparison to what's out there, what everybody else knows. You and I talked about this before, the importance of becoming part of a team. You know, everybody has their respective responsibilities. That's what I lived my whole life in football. You know, these guys were on a team. You know, the guys on the line couldn't play what I played in the backfield and vice versa. I couldn't get on the line of scrimmage and, you know, be a tackle or guard or whatever the case might be. And you learned all different skills, and your personality was different. Most of the people that shoot their mouth off, you know, they're further away from the line of scrimmage. Most of those guys on the line of scrimmage, you ever notice those 300-pounders? How many are on television right now telling jokes and laughing, and they got big, you know, a media following? Almost zero. It's the guys, it's the quarterbacks, you know, it's the basketball players. Those are the guys, quick, fast, make quick, fast decisions. It's almost like not only are you doing different roles for your team, you almost have different personalities. Your personalities are absolutely different. So my point is, try to become as educated as possible in all the different things that may even have a small impact on your life. You and I have talked about this before. I was in fast food for 20 years, you know, quick service restaurants, and learned a lot of things about efficiency and, you know, being expedient. And, you know, fortunately, I had taken some accounting. You know, when I was playing football, I went to, you know, a school that had a 12 course program to sit for the CPA exam. Hey, that was fantastic.
You sat for the CPA exam?
Well, what happened was when I finished
my dad is a CPA. That's why I was asking.
Here's what I saw. When I was done with those courses, I felt like, man, I was a dummy my whole life. I didn't understand, you know, the tax law, you know, income, you know, depreciation, you know, assets, liabilities, income statements, balance sheets. So even though I finished those 12 courses, it wasn't a degree. It prepared you to sit for a CPA exam. So wow. I didn't want a degree. I already had enough degrees. I already had enough licenses on my wall. I didn't need another one. But you know what? I needed that knowledge to sit for that exam. And just as I was ending that last class before I was going to sit and take an exam, I had this Burger King opportunity. And it was like, listen, you've got to make a decision right now. We can't wait. There's a store in Columbus, Ohio right now that's just being completed, and we need an operator for that restaurant. This is Burger King Corporation. What are you going to do? You know, are you going to stick around and, you know, go to, you know, sit for the exam and, you know, go down that route? I just said, well, this is a more likely opportunity for me to go to Columbus, Ohio, where I'd been in college for 4 years, and open up that business. And I didn't waste my time though, Megan, because those courses that I took, they were actual foundation for my success as a business person. Because now I wasn't looking at something as just somebody that was walking in the door like every other customer. Now I had this knowledge of accounting and, you know, how to read a balance sheet. What is going to impact my profitability on an income statement? I knew all the words, I knew all the terms. I could sit and talk with a CPA about it. In fact, that's, you know, how I started having my success. Mostly, you know, if you don't know where you're going, you can be really, really excited. And there's a lot of people really going fast, you know, chasing their goals, but they're not going anywhere. They're like the, you know, those contests, you know, where they put all the cars on the big, large area and they crash, you know, demolition derby. You're going somewhere really, really fast, but you have no idea where you're going. And so I guess what I said, those that fail to plan to fail.
You know, it's funny. My son, I talk about my son all the time because I love him to death, obviously. But he was telling me, he said, Mom, you know, because he's going to ASU next year. And so he said to me, Mom, I really, truly believe, he goes, I'm going to college because I have to. because it's society, you have to, right? And he said, I feel that way. But he said, I truly believe when my grandkids, now mind you, he's 18 years old. He goes, but when I have grandchildren, they're not going to have to go to college because the world is going to be so different. He said, I'm the last generation of college being important. He said, eventually, it's not going to be about college. It's going to be about education and getting it however you want. And I said to him, I said, you need to talk to Doug about that because Doug is all about that. And he said, no, he goes, I'm going to college, Mom, because you want me to go to college. He goes, I truly believe I don't need college, but I'm going because you want me to go. And, he had a really valid point. And I said to him, I said, keep thinking forward. He goes, my grandchildren, and I joked with him and I said, your grandchildren, I go, that's like 60 years down the road. He goes, they're not going to go to college. They're not going to need college because the world will be so different. He said, it's all going to change. And I think that he really has a valid point.
Yeah, when I first got to college, there's some more distractions. It's like you just said, if you're really just interested in becoming a better person and learning a job, actually really, really, really learning a job, not just learning some story that happened over in Asia 500 years ago, how is that going to make your success any better now? And it's not going to. In fact, most courses that I was at in college, the moment I took the final, I walk out that door going, I need to get rid of all this stuff as fast as I can because I need room for whatever else is left. Because whatever I just learned over these last 6 weeks is going to make no difference whatsoever. No one will ever ask me anything about what I just learned here the last 2 months. So how is it going to be important to me? They go, well, you learn how to study. Come on, that's your best response? That goofy class?
It's so funny and it's so true.
9 o'clock in the morning. Come on, that's the best you can come up with. Yeah, I just absolutely feel like, and of course, I'm a person, that went through high school and college and, took classes, but once I think I have a better ability to comment on it than a lot of people, because why would you listen to a person that only went to high school and they're downgrading college, or they're saying whatever, it's good or bad? They've never been there. They have no idea. If you want to really start making connections, they go, oh yeah, being on a team and you can make good connections in college. Most of those guys that I made connections with in college, I mean, those guys were like drinking buddies or something, that was no like lifelong, relationship. Guys on our football team, that's different because we actually did something together. We sacrificed, we worked hard, we worked out, we conditioned, we were part of a team trying to beat the other team. We traveled, it was really, really a tight family. And, some of those guys, I still talk to them today, like we never left, like we've always been together. But I really do believe, Megan, you very, accurately described, I think, what's going to happen in the future. And especially right now, the incredible criticism on the learning process, and not just the learning process, what people are supposed to know, but all these other things that are brought into the classroom from outside that are influenced by the person giving the message, which is the teacher. And teachers have incredible power in a classroom. I know because when I had football players in a room and I'm the head coach, they're listening to me. They're listening to what I have to say. And, because otherwise they're not going to be there. They're going to get sent home. They're not going to be around very long. And it's the same thing in our school system, I think. You're really subject to teach you. And there's better teachers, just like coaches. Again, whatever the role is, whatever the name, the acumen, or the description, a coach is a teacher, okay? So I have no problem calling a teacher a coach, or a coach a teacher. That's exactly what they do. They're coaching, but it's more than just coaching. I think once you get to athletics, okay, it's one thing to tell somebody how to get down on the ground, get into position, to get in their stance, whatever. That's one thing. But it's another thing to bring the incredible emotional element to it, like sports demand. There are some unbelievable professors that I've met in my life. You know what? They had unbelievable knowledge. They could change the topic, subject every single day in that classroom. Was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Could you take those professors though and put them on a field or a court and say, okay, instead of a whole classroom now of 30 people, you only have 11 or you only have 5. Okay, make these guys do what you want to just tell them what you're doing. You know what? It's a different dynamic. You know what? Those people that can teach are not good coaches because they don't have that emotional element to it. When they send a message, nobody's listening because you know what? It's a boring message. One thing
I told you yesterday, I met with Reggie Grant yesterday, who's, retired guy, NFL guy. And I was telling him, how you and I are such great friends. And I was like, I never realized anything about the NFL until I really got to know Doug. And I was talking to him about how you've said in the past, how when you were in defense and you hit somebody, how it was like a car crash. And Reggie started to laugh and he said to me, oh my gosh, he goes, if fans could sit like on the side where we sat as players, he goes, it's a totally different experience. He goes, Doug is so right. He goes, it's a car crash when people hit each other. But he goes, as fans, when you're in the stage, you don't even understand that. And I said, no, I know. And I said, that's why I was so amazed when Doug told me that. He said, it's a car crash. It's literally a car crash. And so anyway, he's working with us on our book, Doug, and you and I, and our Pro Sports Soaring Summit. And so it was really fun, but there's no doubt, I don't know how else to say it, but athletes like you and like Reggie are driven and have something inside of you that is like an entrepreneur. Like he said to me yesterday, he goes, an entrepreneur has the same drive as an athlete, but the drive and the determination and the effort and everything that you do to make it happen is so constant. And I don't think, and that's what I always want to project with everybody, is that people don't realize the dedication it takes to make stuff happen and like make things occur. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I never thought you'd bring that up again about, it's a car crash. It's, even afterwards when I became a coach, in college at Ohio State and with the Jets and the Falcons, when you stand on that sideline, Megan, and you hear the unbelievable crash of like two automobiles or two people, we've got a plastic helmet and some plastic shoulder pads, some other pads on us. But when you hear these crashes, like 1 or 2 feet away from you, you're going, I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore. That would not be good for your body. And here's the other thing, you just had this huge crash. Now you got to jump back on your feet and you got to run back to the huddle and do another crash the next play. And again, and again, and again. And, most times I would say because I was a run supporting safety, which meant in my safety position, 10, 11, 12 yards deep, I would always come up and I led the team in tackles one year, a couple years. And so
I would say that again, run supporting tackle.
Yeah. In other words, when I started in the 70s, there was more running than passing. So, and the way you could tell that, Megan, was you looked at the line of scrimmage and all the linemen were leaning forward on their hands. They weren't going to back up like a pass play. They were going to come across the line of scrimmage. So that every time we lined up, I looked at all the linemen. They told me run or pass. If they were leaning back like they were going to back up and try to pass block, I knew it was going to be a pass. I mean, no more simple than that. But if it was going to be a run, I would dig my heels into the turf, whatever. At 10 yards, I would come up an extra yard. Usually I would like 11 or 12. If I saw it was run, I would get up at 10 yards. And you know what? I was like in a spring machine. I was getting ready to fire myself to that line of scrimmage as fast as I could and hit somebody, the lineman, the running back, the quarterback, whatever. And, that's how you lead the team in tackles because you're the furthest person away from the ball, when people line up. So it's.
Yeah, but but again, that's what Reggie and I were talking about yesterday is that that drive and determination with athletes is something very special. It's like, you know, it's within you, and it's the killer instinct, and I mean that in a positive way, but it's the killer instinct, and athletes and entrepreneurs have that, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's like, because, you know, when you learn how to take a hit, it's not just physical, it's mental also. Because I want to say I won every battle on the field. No, I didn't win every battle. I'll be honest with you. I hit a couple people that were so much bigger than I was, even though I hit them really hard unexpectedly. They got the better, you know, a person that was 50 or 60 pounds heavier than you were, or more, they were probably going to win those battles, you know, when you crashed together. So you had to mentally just keep, you know, feeding yourself. It wasn't that bad. I can get back up again. I can do it better the next time. You're self-talking to yourself. No, you're having a
I always picture, so here's how I picture you, Doug, because you've told me this. You were the smallest guy on the field and you were the biggest defense. So I always picture you as this like human, like monster, where even though you're like the small guy, you're like making everything happen and like conquering all these big guys. Cause you were like, you've told me, that's why I know it, that you were the smallest guy, the least weight, but yet you conquered all these people.
You know what happens too when you're on a team and you see, I'm sure this is like the Army, and you have somebody in your platoon that goes out there and he puts himself in danger. He's putting his life on the line, but he's doing something to allow the rest of us to either escape or to be in a better position to fight the enemy. And when you do that on the field, other players notice it. Like when there was guys in front of me, linebackers and defensive linemen, and when I would see them like beat somebody initially blocked them, they would defeat the block, throw that guy on the ground, then they would go make a tackle on the running back or the quarterback. I'm going, man, because I'm watching this whole show back there like it's a theater, because I'm seeing it all developed right in front of me. I go, that was an incredible effort. I said, you know, you deserve a hug, pat on the back, whatever. That's, you know what? When your teammate does that to you, it's like, oh, you know, it's like the best praise. It's better than your mother ever gave you.
Well, it's kind of like when you just give somebody a hug and say, I really love you and respect you, and I'm so glad you're my friend. It's kind of the same thing, but in the real world, not the football world, but just being, you know, sharing positive stuff like you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's too bad, like I said, that we couldn't have something like that in life, you know, where we all, every week, it was mandatory for us to do this 1 hour activity where we showed respect for each other. Because you know what? It's what you learn and what you do over and over again. If everybody right now is not showing any respect for anybody, everything is criticism. And, you know, I just think that, you know, overall, it just sets a bad tone. That's why I always think of things to do from a complimentary standpoint. Having been in the fast food business, I love going up to people at the counter. I know I can't give them a tip. You know, employees at a fast food restaurant are at least in our organization, it was not allowed to get tipped. You know, what are you gonna have, a little tip jar up there on the front counter? Okay, here's my, it says tip jar.
Yeah, that would be weird at Burger King.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. But you know, I always try to tip in terms of a compliment, and everything, even if it was like not very good service, I would thank them. Hey, listen, thank you for coming in today. You had a choice. You could have stayed home and made more money, but you decided to come to work and, you know, do, you know, a job that not many people wanted to do. It blows people away. They're like, are you talking to me? I go, yeah, I'm talking to you. It's like, well, thank you. And
you know, I grocery shop at Vons and Ralph's, right?
yeah.
And it was just yesterday. I went to get some tomatoes and lettuce, and because I'm a big salad girl. And I told the bagger, because the cashier said to me, do you want a bag? And I said, yeah. And so I said to the bag girl, and she was bagging my stuff up. It was like, you know, tomatoes, lettuce, avocados, my normal stuff. And I said, your makeup looks amazing. She was like this beautiful Hispanic woman. And I go, your makeup looks amazing. Like, what? Like, your makeup's beautiful. And she looked at me so weird and she was like, thank you. Like, it was so weird because I told her, and she goes, I've had it on since 5 a.m. And I go, your makeup's gorgeous. Like, seriously, I go, it doesn't, I would never have known you were up since 5 a.m. I go, but your makeup's beautiful. So those are the kind of things you're talking about. Small little positive things that are just cool. And it's just, you know, now I always say being you and being like a normal, complimentary, hey, thank you, and being appreciative for what people are doing, whether it's bagging groceries or, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter. But just being nice is, I think if people were nice to everybody and just nice, it would make the world a whole different place.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's really hard to talk about a person, let's say a particular individual, or let's say somebody that's working some job, I don't know, like a taxi driver or something. You know, those guys are all terrible. They don't care about anybody. And then all of a sudden you have a taxi driver that takes you somewhere that day. They're like so nice, like, thank you for choosing my taxi. You know, I hope you have a nice ride as you know, we go over to your destination. You're going, this guy is killing me. I just said how bad taxi drivers were. This guy is like over the top. You know, he's complimentary. He got me here fast. You know, it's like,
right back at you, Doug.
You know, it's one thing, you know, when you're embellishing or you're basically signifying, you know, some type of behavior that somebody already claimed you had, like say football players. Oh, these guys are dumb. They're idiots. They don't know what they're doing. They spend all their money. No, all of them don't spend money wastefully. You know, a lot of them are very intelligent. You know, they in school, they've graduated with great degrees that help them manage their money. And they don't really even need an investment advisor. Even a guy.
I told you about my friend Giles Cole. He played for the Falcons. He and his brother and him played for the Falcons. And then when he got done with the NFL, then he became an attorney and he became an agent. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, people are extremely smart in the NFL. And Reggie Grant is a perfect example of that. I mean, he creates all of, I'm going to send you the videos, but he creates all the jackets, the leather jackets for everything. And it's just, the bottom line is it's all in here. It's all in here. And you got to do what you feel is the best.
You know what? It's like, you know, you met us, you, Megan, were in not an occupation, but a pursuit, you know, of, you know, representing yourself as attractively as you could with all the other attributes that you have. And, you know, I was in the world of sports, football, things like that. But, you know, at the same time, you know, that whole thing I talked about, you know, you can graduate, but you never stop learning. And both of us, you know, realized that, you know what, we couldn't keep doing what we were doing in eternity. You know, so at some point in time, we were going to have
pivoting. You got to pivot.
No one talks about pivoting. I'm serious. I think pivoting is one of the most important things in your life. And, you know, because things are always going to happen to us. You know, we're not going to be able to do the same things. Me, because physically, I couldn't keep chasing people and tackling them. You know, when you've got both
you couldn't have car crashes every weekend anymore.
You know, I just say that everybody in this world has a limit on everything that they do, whether it's smoking cigarettes, whether it's eating cheeseburgers, whether it's having tackles in a football game or concussions. How many concussions? I figured it out, you know, from high school when I had my first one, junior high. I figured I had about 30 concussions. I don't think I could have suffered another 30 concussions. You know,
well, I go back to my son. You know, he was a really good soccer player. He chose not to play soccer in college, but he was a really good soccer player. But he only had 3 concussions, and it was brutal. And so, like I always say, you're like a Superman in the sense that all of the abuse your body took, and you're still alive, well, and extremely intelligent.
I don't know about that. I think, you know, here's the other thing too. I think I've had some people do some wonderful things for me in my life. and it felt so good being on the receiving end of that. So I when I can, I always try to return the favor, not to that person because that person's long gone, different state, all that kind of stuff. But I call it like the shock treatment. You just shock somebody in doing something that they would never expect you to do. Why did he say that? Why did he do that for me? It's, it doesn't come with a price tag. It's voluntary. And, if you can do that for somebody, and I've done that for several people in my life. I don't want to get into mentioning their names or anything, but, they went on to be professionals in what their pursuit was. And it is wonderful to hear somebody say, I want to thank Doug Plank for what he did for me in this situation. It would have never happened otherwise. Because we could say the same thing, Megan. We could go back and look at our life and say there was somebody there in that course of our life that totally changed our life. And maybe they didn't even do anything for us other than just say something to us that was encouraging or that we had never thought of. And
totally. I agree. One person can change it all, and being a positive influence, and that's how I live my life. And that's why I do the Soaring Summit. But being a positive influence and doing one thing for one person can change somebody's life. And sometimes it's as simple as you're spectacular and you look great. And that's what somebody needs to get to the next level. And that's what you and I are both about. We're the same way. We're both the same way.
Yeah. I want to act like, when I go back to my hometown, some people say, man, you're lucky, you were here or there, all this sort of thing. I go, no, the luck isn't like winning the lottery. It's not like you do everything the same and then one day you get the right ticket. And now life is changing. I'm a millionaire, multi-millionaire. It isn't like that. When I had to try to be successful in going to college, Ohio State was Ohio State. Even 30 or 40 years ago, it wasn't much different than it is right now. I mean, if you ask somebody, name the top 3 teams in the country in football, Ohio State's got to be in there some way, because of their success and, getting in the playoffs and all those sort of things. I'm not saying they're the best, but they're one of the best. And, there's so many good teams that, you can't be the best every year just because some dynamics happen. There's injuries and things like that. But the bottom line is you got to set your goals high and always keep saying, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better.
I have a big question for you, and we haven't talked about this. I have a question because I think this is, when you had success in life, and then like for me personally, I love like my Miss Texas experience. I thought it was wonderful. And I always, when I have a down day, I look at that picture and I remember how hard I worked to win that competition. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I had to work really hard to win, right? So what would we say to our listeners and our viewers when you've had success in your life and then you have a minute of, I don't want to say failure, but like adjustment and pivoting? How do you personally keep driving forward?
You know what? I try to keep a record of everything I do. I write down every meeting I have, and I have for the last 20 years of my life. I don't have 20 years of records. I don't need I don't need a record from 20 years. The IRS is going to come after me and say, hey, you made some money 20 years ago. No, I keep it like 3 years. I keep it like 3 years of records. But my point is, I felt like my first year, like in the NFL, I thought I was more energetic. That year I was the starter from the first game of the year. I led the team in tackles that year. I did a lot of positive things. And, we all sometimes we get tired or we feel like, geez, we're doing the same thing over and over. You're not really doing the same thing over and over. You don't realize it, but if you're not as successful or you're not doing things as well as you did before, you're doing something different. You're not doing it as long. You're not getting up as early. You're not working as late. So you're cheating yourself. So what I would do, I would go back and I would grab those games from my first year, my rookie year, and I would look at those games and say, my level of effort, not technique, But my level of effort was better that year than I think any year I've ever had in the National Football League, because every play was a new play. Every game was something new. I had never been to these stadiums before, played against these teams. So it was about bringing that energy and enthusiasm back to what I was doing. Don't become tired. It's even true with our family. Whether you realize it or not, your kids are watching you every single time, even though you don't think they are, or they might even be in the other room, but they're listening. They're watching you and everything you do. And every time that I ever went and gave my wife a kiss in front of my kids, they would come over like later and say, "Hey, Dad, that was something. I'm glad you did that." I go, "It wasn't that hard." I mean,
you have a beautiful wife. It's pretty easy to kiss her.
They're watching you, and it's just like your teammates are watching you. And it gets back to the other thing I talked about. When you see somebody on your team, in your family, make some huge sacrifice, doesn't have to be necessarily physical. It could be monetarily. It could be, moving someplace, one place or another, but they sacrificed. They made a decision, and they did it for somebody else other than themselves. And you really just got to sit back and go, wow, that's the mentality. That is the sacrifice that I really need to have to be successful. And
somebody had me on their podcast last week because they wanted me to talk about the Soaring Summit. And they said, what drives you? And I said, it's like really simple for me. I really, truly, like I said, a journalist at heart, but I really, truly want to put people's stories out there and be a positive influence, because in my heart, I truly believe every person is on this earth for a specific reason. Like when you really get deep into it, having a baby, like when you get really deep into the situation, having a baby is a miraculous thing to get pregnant, right? And so then this baby's created, and then this human's created, and then, everybody has a specific purpose. And so I said, I just know that every single human being is important, every single human being, no matter who they are. And I think that what I'm trying to say is people need to know their worth. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, you have worth, because the fact that you're here on earth is a blessing.
I think that's extremely well said, because I think in some environments, when people are growing up, they don't get that kind of encouragement from even family members sometimes. I always tried to encourage my kids, to do things, even if they were unsuccessful, because you're their parent. You're the person they look up to. They don't tell you that, but they're always watching. Like I said, always watching you. And do you have any words of wisdom for them? Is there anything else that you can benefit them or suggest to them? And I think that it's like my parents really didn't go outside their small town that they lived in, so they didn't have a lot of experiences, Megan, like you and I. You and I can sit down here and we can talk for like a week and never stop talking, because you know what?
I know I put that on our podcast. I'm like, sorry, Doug and I can just talk forever. We are trying to make them short, but just listen when you can listen, because you and I can talk forever.
I mean, like my father, he would talk for like 10 minutes. That's it. He had nothing left to say. There was no other story to be told. I would just look at him and go, okay. I would just nod my head like, okay, that must be the end of the story. But you know what? People that have never been up in front of other people like you and I have, we know how to do this. We know there's a beginning, there's a middle, and then there's the end. And even our little teeny conversation. Hi, Megan, how are you today? How's everything been? So you said hi, you asked a question to show interest, and now it's up to you. Tell us what, and then at the end of it, there's a goodbye, thank you, really great seeing you again. People that aren't very social, they don't know how to do that.
Well, I have to say something, because I just, while I'm remembering it, what you said about being a parent and your kids are watching you constantly. And, as I've always said, I love my kids more than anything. I love my kids to death, and they're 16, 17, and 18. And it's really funny because my mom, when they were with my mom, said to me, your kids are exercise crazy. They run every morning. They're like so disciplined. And I said to my mom, and I love my mom and dad. And I said to my mom, I said, you know, I might not have been the perfect mom, but man, I go, they watched me who I am, which I'm very disciplined. I work out. I like, you know what I mean? And so what you're saying is so important in the sense that as a mom or a parent, not even a mom, but a parent, you always are trying to be like the parent, but what you exude from you is just you. You know what I'm saying? Like what you try to, you know, Magic 1, 2, 3. I don't know if you've ever read that, but Magic 1, 2, 3 is like the book to discipline your children when they're growing up at 4, 5, and 6. And my mom used to always say to me, you need to read Magic 1, 2, 3 because you need to discipline your kids. And I would always say, you know what? I'm just going to live my life and let them watch me. And so now that they're 16, 17, and 18, it's so fun because my mom's like, you know, I got to tell you, your kids are amazing. I don't know how you did it. And I said, you know, they probably just watched me because I was working time with my stuff and I was working all the time. And I said, so I'm so glad they work out. I'm so glad they eat right. I go, but they were just watching me. And I didn't realize that until you just said that right now.
Yeah, I just think it's one of the things that we have to just be so aware of. And I love my parents, but also I realized that, you know what, how could I expect something from them that they never really were in a position in their life to do that? They were never required to get in front of a group of people and talk or you know, to introduce or to say goodbye or all those sort of things. And so you just have to understand what level, when you're talking with someone, you know, where are they in this ability to communicate and experiences and all things like that. And, you know, for me to go back to my small hometown and try to explain what it was like to run in a stadium with over 100,000 people in it, like at the Rose Bowl, and explain what that sound was. Truly, it sounded like you were on the runway at an airport and the jet was taking off like 10 feet away from you. And because everything was just shaking. I mean, everything was shaking. And I remember coming into even some locker rooms sometimes in certain situations, especially in college, where the crowd is more energetic. The bands are playing. And I'm inside this locker room and it's literally shaking. I mean, it's like vibrate. The whole stadium is vibrating.
Did you feel it? Weren't you on a total high? Like that's like a total high to have when you're a personality like you and me. That's a total high. When you walk into a room and like that you feel that way, that's a total high.
It was a total high. You know, it's like the first game at Ohio State that my parents came out for, and I met them afterwards. You know, I came out of the locker room and but they'd never been in a place in front of like thousands and thousands and thousands of people yelling and screaming. The biggest, you know, stadium we had was like 2,000 people back in my town, and we never won games, you know, so we were not even a good team. So nobody was cheering. The only thing maybe they were, you know, pounding on the seats for was, you know, us to do better or score a touchdown, whatever. But to go to Ohio State or the Rose Bowl and see that crowd, when I came out after that game, I could tell they had like tears in their eyes. And I said, "Are you guys okay?" I said, what is it? I said, they go, "Doug, when we sat in that stadium and the band started coming out and all, you know, the band's a big deal at Ohio State. So everybody in that stadium is yelling, screaming, cheering. And when they came on the field, you know, playing the fight song or whatever, they just started crying." And I think so many things in our life are so emotionally packed that all we have to do is just live the moment. We don't have to do anything. Our body will do it for us. You know,
it's so funny you say that because I have a story I can relate to that. So number one, I want to say I was in the marching band. My mom was the choir director at church, so I played drums, flute, piccolo, trombone. Like I was always in the music because I got bored very quickly. So I was when I would achieve my goals, first piccolo, first flute, first trombone, I would always move on to a new instrument, right? But then I got really bored. And then the flag, like in the marching band, the flag girls, they had cool outfits. So I told my mom, I'm like, I want those boots and that outfit. I'm going to be a flag girl. And my mom's like, you're a musician. And I'm like, no, I want those outfits. So anyway, the whole point of the story is, it wasn't until, and I can relate to what you're talking about, your mom and dad at the Rose Bowl, because when I was the Miss Texas thing, my mom, when I won, she came up to me and she said to me, I'm so proud of you, Megan. And she said, I wanted to make you the nicest girl in the world. And she said, but now and this is now when I'm 40 years old. She said, but now I'm going to tell you, you're beautiful. And I've never told you that because I've never wanted you to know that, because I wanted you to be a nice person. And she said, but now, she said, I want you to know you're beautiful and rock on. And I told my mom, I'm like, I'm not beautiful. I'm just a normal girl. And she goes, no, you're really pretty. And she goes, you just won Miss Texas, figure it out. And I said, no, I'm just a nice girl. But my mom, and that's why, like we've been talking about today, parents, that influence is so important. The most important thing to me was always being a nice person and taking care of people. And it wasn't until I won Mrs. Texas and my mom said, dude, I'm going to tell you now, you're actually kind of pretty. And she said, you're kind of pretty. So, but I didn't ever want you to know you were kind of pretty, but you're kind of pretty. And I said, thanks, Mom, I appreciate it.
You think of our census, and I told you before about emotional coaches like my buddy Ryan, the defense coordinator, Mike Ditka, Woody Hayes, and because they're what they said matched what they looked like. Coaches that are not afraid to show emotion. I've had coaches in front of me and teachers that have actually cried when they were telling me something. You don't think that increases your listening capacity when you see somebody crying, talking to you? It gets so emotional, and it's like I said, it's the words that you hear, it's the action that you're watching, and when you put it all together simultaneously, the vision and the sound, it's overwhelming. I would challenge anybody in some of the experiences I had to watch and to hear what was going on simultaneously. You were going to lose it. And in fact, the thing I talked about with my parents, it had to be both. It had to be both the visual. They looked at this huge stadium, almost 100,000 people, and so
that the Rose Bowl is huge. Seriously.
But,
I mean, like, I can't imagine walking on there you were a performer, even though you were a professional football player, but you were a performer. Walking into that stage, I can imagine, but it's like, you and I love that space, but like walking in there and being that person is so cool. And
like being in the movies, looking at those old Roman pictures when people are gladiators in the stadiums, and it kind of reminded me of like that. All these people are yelling and cheering, leaning over the railing.
Right, exactly.
I think even like my parents, I thought about this afterwards. How could they lose it with a band just coming on the field? You know what? It was the visual, but it was also the hearing. They were hearing this, whatever the fight song was, on top of the visual. It was overwhelming. You know what? You don't even have to think about it. Tears just start rolling down your face. It's like automatic. It's like, I challenge anybody to be in those situations where you're getting just bombarded with both sight and sound. I'm sorry, you're going to lose it. And
well, I got to ask you, I don't remember, honestly, and I don't mean to be rude, but are your parents still alive? I can't remember.
No, my mother just passed away recently. She was like 90 years old, and she was just slowly, starting to lose some of her faculties, her senses, hearing and sight. And it was.
Was your dad still alive?
No, my dad had passed away, a few years earlier.
So your parents are both passed away.
They're both gone. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I still talk to them. I still talk to them every day.
I know. You're so. So just before we got on this call, I was talking to my mother. My mom and dad are 75 and they're both 75 and they've been married, like I said, 58 years or whatever. But I call and talk to my mom as much as I can possibly talk to her because I love her to death. And I know someday, like I can't imagine the day I can't call and talk to her. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's gonna come a day where I can't call.
Megan, it started when I was a pro football player, my rookie year, because I was so even in the training camp, my rookie year, I would call my home every day. I go, "Are you still there, Doug? Are you still?" I was going to get ready to get cut. I was a 12th round draft pick. Mom, Dad, I'm still here. I'm still here. Down underneath the water, like at the Titanic. Yeah, I haven't gotten out yet, but I know the ship's sinking. But I'm down here and I'm still breathing. And,
that's such a parent though. They're like, "Are you still surviving?" I love it. Oh, it's so fun.
So I always, during my time when I was playing with the sports, so I was in Chicago, they were in Pennsylvania, and it kind of changed once I got out of playing football and moved to Columbus, Ohio, because then I was much closer. We could visit each other, all that sort of thing. But in Chicago, I was always make a point of either calling my parents or leaving a message if they weren't there and just saying, "Hey, this is Doug, just trying to touch base with you today." You know why? Just exactly what you said, Megan. There's going to be a day when you get on that phone that you're going to call them. They're not going to be there. They're gone. And that was always so special to me, to always realize, that, things are going to change at some point in time. And, try to just comfort yourself in knowing that you did everything you could to keep in touch.
Oh yeah, no, it's heartfelt. I know exactly how you feel, and that's why I didn't answer your call earlier, because I was talking to my mom, because every moment.
That's more important. I'm telling you right now.
No, I know, but that's why I didn't answer your call, because I was talking to my mom, and I love her to death. I love her to death, and I know there's going to become a point in my life where I can't call her and talk to her, and I think it's really important, because you got to realize parents, and again, I shout this out to all the parents out there, like Doug said, even when you don't realize it, you're an influence. So even though things might be kind of crazy or something might be not positive, just be a positive influence, and your kids are going to see that. Just like in my experiences in life, I went through a lot of stuff in my life, but I was always positive and I was always moving forward. And thank God my kids saw that. And my kids always say, "We are driven because we watched you always never give up. We watched you never give up." So even when you're going through trials and tribulations, your kids watch the positive atmosphere. And so don't feel bad. I guess what I'm trying to say to our listeners and viewers, don't feel bad about having something happen or something go negative, because you can still be a positive influence, because it'll teach your children how to get through it, and it'll teach them how to continue to move on. Because you know what? If you're alive, you're not dead, which means you have to keep going. Right?
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're right.
You have to keep going. And so it's all good. All right, Doug. Thank you. Love you always. I'll see you next week.
Always a pleasure, Megan. Learn something new every day from you. So thank you.
Yep. So I'll see you next week, and we'll all be here next week. And always, please, guys, if you have a question for Doug specifically, because he's cooler than I am, but if you have a question for Doug, please email me at m@megazine.com or just text me at 424-288-1364. And we'd love to answer your questions. And we're doing some really fun stuff to grab a whole bunch of football superstars, 40 to be exact. And they're going to, like, 40 of Doug's is what I'm saying. So anyway, the point is that just please reach out to us. We're like really normal, down to earth, want to be a positive influence for everybody. So, all right, Doug, see you next week.
Okay, Meg, take care.
See you.